So what is the 60-40 rule? Well, first, let's talk about Les and Peter. Les, Binet, and Peter Field, who we are very, very lucky to call our mentors. Les and Peter are legendary effectiveness gurus. Some call them the godfathers of marketing effectiveness. And Les and Peter, I think, have gotten famous for a deceptively simple idea, which is the 60-40 rule, which basically shows that for maximum financial performance, you have to allocate about 60% of your budget to top-of-funnel brand building and about 40% of your budget to lower-funnel direct response, or what Les and Peter usually call sales activation. It's an interesting insight, and I think what's really powerful about it is how they arrived at this conclusion.
And what I like about the 60-40 rule is it is not theoretical, it is empirical.
Right.
It's going and looking at the actual data.
One thing I love about it is it's econometric data. So what does that mean? It means they looked at the financial performance of the company, the financial outputs, and then they looked at the marketing inputs. In other words, how much money did they spend on brand versus demand? How many people did they reach? How good was the creative? Did they pre-test it or not? So they looked at all these different inputs of what marketing decision was made, and then they looked at the financial outcomes, which, this is just like such a powerful concept, is the marketing finance concept. They've really taken marketing metrics and translated them into financial metrics. And then to your point, it's empirical. They just observed what did they see in the data, and this is what they found. They basically found there's two types of marketing. There's brand building, which tends to be more emotional, tends to be broader targeted. The goal is sort of to build a memory of the brand that will be measured in the future. A lot of the effects are long-term, although there's a short-term effect as well. And then you've got bottom-of-funnel sales activation, which causes these sort of quick hits in terms of sales performance, but then very fast diminishing returns.
I think wonderful about the observation or the empirical observation is it is a budgeting rule is really what it is. I mean, we've obviously talked a lot about the 95-5 rule. Neither of these are rules, which I find funny again, but the 95-5 rule is just saying only 5% of people are in market today, most are in market in the future, but it doesn't mean you should spend 5% kind of in 95% brand building and 5% sales activation. It actually is, that's how people are arranged, right? In market, out market, but you still need to capture your fair share, win your fair share. And so this is the budgeting part of it. It's like if the market is described as in market, out market, it's 95-5, the budgeting is 60-40.
It's funny. I mean, I keep having this conversation actually. So you and I, we spent literally a decade of our life banging the drum of brand in B2B and just telling everybody you need to invest in top of funnel brand, not just bottom of funnel performance marketing. And every once in a while, it actually happened to me last week. Someone's like, are people doing that more? Did you guys make any impact at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I was in a meeting recently, which I told you about, where they were like, we want to invest in brand. How should we do that? And I was like, well, what do you use your spend today? Top funnel, bottom funnel. And they said 11% top funnel, 89% bottom of funnel. And it's a very well-known brand. It's a famous brand.
Yeah, I mean, I would have a slightly more positive outlook, but not much more. I think we made a tiny little dent. I think maybe there's 5% more brand building in B2B than there was before we started publishing endless series of papers on the financial contribution of brand. But it's certainly not the dominant tactic in B2B today. It's still hard to find great B2B brand organizations. Well, I think there's the lead is almost buried there, where ROI is not how you measure brand. Actually, it's not how you measure anything. This is I'm obsessed with Les Binet and Sarah Carter's book, How Not to Plan.
66 Ways Not to Plan.
66 Ways Not to Plan or something like that. And they have this idea of the ROI trap, which is ROI is return over investment, right? It doesn't matter how big the R or return is. Actually, the way to boost ROI is to shrink the denominator. In other words, to shrink the investment. So the things that usually have highest ROI are very small investments that have a pretty small payoff, but relatively big proportional to the return. It's the classic confusion of efficiency and effectiveness. ROI is not an effectiveness metric, it's an efficiency metric. R is an effectiveness metric.
So ROI should by that definition, go down over time.
Right.
Right. As you reach more people, your ROI should be positive, but decreasing, and that's okay. In fact, that's totally fine.
I really like this answer because when it comes to AI, everyone's focused on what's going to change, but it's always more interesting to think about what's not going to change. The 95/5 rule isn't going to change because that's just a law of consumer behavior. People are not in market. The 60/40 rule is just basically saying you need to balance long-term and short-term commercial objectives in some sort of even split. AI is going to change the way you activate or execute against these ideas, but it doesn't really change the fundamental rules. So I think it's a relatively sad state of affairs to report from the laboratorio, which is that all the marketing effectiveness research says you need to spend something like 60% of your budget on brand. If you ask marketers, what are they spending on brand? It's usually like 5%, 0%. 1%. And most marketers don't even think brand is a priority. But before blaming the finance department and the sales department, maybe we should blame ourselves because maybe we've done a bad job articulating what brand can do for a business by very narrowly focusing on sales and short-term sales contribution instead of widening the aperture of what brand can really do.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's easy to measure. And what's easy to measure, what's easy to see gets measured, gets managed, right? I think it's that simple. Only if you own the company or you're a luxury product, or reputation super important because you're in a regulated industry, do companies really invest in brand because it is a huge asset? Everyone else is just playing the short-term game. And honestly, what does that mean? It creates a big opportunity for anyone who's willing to counter position or counter program and play the long game.